Welcome to Beyond the Closing Table with Setco Services. In this podcast, we delve into the world of real estate and explore what happens beyond the closing table. Join us for insightful discussions and expert interviews that will change the way you see real estate transactions. Welcome to Beyond the Closing Table with George Brandon Jr., sponsored by Setco Services. Today I have Mr. John Barlow, Churchill resident and my neighbor.
Yeah.
Welcome, John.
Yeah. Good morning.
How you doing?
I'm doing good.
Well, before we get into your business and how you made it to the beautiful Emerald Coast, let's learn a little bit about you. Where are you from originally?
I am from a small town in Hardin County, Iowa.
Okay.
North central part of Iowa called Iowa Falls.
Okay.
Did you grow up in a small town?
No, sir.
You were. Okay.
I grew up in the big city of Memphis.
Okay. All right.
But deep south.
Yeah.
We were outside of Memphis, but no, it was not. I wouldn't consider it small, and definitely not. Is that like farming community?
Oh, it's 5,000 people. You know, Iowa is sort of cut up, and there's a town every 7 miles. You know, The theory is, or it's as far as a horse and carriage could go between churches.
Okay.
You know, from where, so
makes sense.
Yeah. And every 7 miles there's a town. So Iowa Falls was about 5,000 people, and it was a farming community. And at the time I grew up, it was, heavily a farming community. It's less so today. I mean, that town has changed fairly significantly, but
well, how was growing up there? Did y'all have a farm? Did you work?
No, my dad, my father was a banker. My grandfather was a banker. My great-grandfather was a banker. So that's the only thing I knew how to do. Okay. And
did they own the banks?
They owned my dad worked for my grandfather, and went into World War II, and he came back and he went to work for him again. And my grandfather and his brother owned a bank in a neighboring community. And the family doesn't really understand exactly what happened, but I think they got into an argument, so they sold the bank.
The brothers,
the brothers, my grandfather and my uncle. It would be my
Do you mind if we go back another?
Sure.
You said great grandfather started.
Was
the one he started.
He started that bank, and he came.
What's the time frame? I'm not trying to let everybody know your age here, but
no, he started the bank in probably the late 1800s, 1890s or something like that.
That's wild. In Iowa?
In Iowa. The town was called Dumont, Iowa.
Okay.
And it was about 40 miles from Iowa Falls. So he started, and at that time, banks often had furniture stores also. So, because people were building homes, and so they would finance the home. I mean, the bank was kind of might even be a smaller part of the enterprise. Initially, and so they had a bank and a furniture store.
I've never heard that.
Yeah, and then they continued to, then they developed the bank, passed it to my grandfather, and his brother, and then they decided to, like I said, to sell it. So that was like 1949, and my dad or 48, and my dad had been back from World War II for 3 years. Working there. So he had to have a job. So he moved to a neighboring community, Iowa Falls, and the person that owned the bank there, at that time there were probably 25,000 banks in the United States. Mm-hmm. So I went to work for the guy. His son worked there, and he said, "Well, sometime if you want to sell the bank, I'd be interested." And he said, "No, I'm going to pass this to my son." And so a year later, his son got caught embezzling money. And so Mr. Rummel said, okay, I'm out of here. I can
embezzle money from the bank?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Right. He was writing himself some loans.
Okay.
And the examiners caught him. So at the age of 31, my dad went to his father, the ex-banker, and to my mother's father and mother, and said, I need to borrow some money. I'd like to buy this bank. And they fronted the money for him to buy, at that time, 52% of the bank. They had some minority shareholders.
Do you mind if what era is this? We'd be in the 50s, early 50s?
Yeah, he bought it in 1950.
Okay. How much did that cost? Do you know?
Probably under under $500,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's a small bank, but still.
Small bank. It had under $10 million in assets, and they only bought half of it. So, the bank usually has a capital of 10% of what their assets are. So it would have had probably about $800,000 million worth of capital.
Okay.
And at that time, banks traded at book value or even maybe a little bit below book value sometimes in some transactions. So it was probably about $400,000.
So Dad's got the majority share, at least.
Yeah.
In
my dad and the two grandparents.
Okay.
All right. Together. They both went on the board. Yeah.
All right.
My grandfather was my mother's was from a farm family. So he was a vice president of the bank, but he knew nothing about banking. And, but my dad's father was there every day, sort of, checking on things.
Okay. So how did Dad grow? Did he expand? You say he's 31?
Yeah.
That sounds young these days to
it does.
Be an owner of a bank.
It does. But Dad was in the military, and he was tightly controlled everything. I mean, he was a lieutenant and trained troops black troops in African Americans in Puerto Rico that then they sent off to the
pretty cool.
Yeah, to the Pacific Front. Okay. But he did that for all of World War II. And he could type. Because he worked in a bank before that, and he knew how to type, that was kind of a rare skill, so that kept him off the front lines. Yeah. He typed with two fingers too, because they were very old Underwood typewriters, and you had to pound on them. Yep. But he could type, I don't know, fast.
Okay. Yeah. With two fingers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So he grew, he was very innovative. He had one of the first drive-up banks in Iowa and one of the first ATMs in Iowa, if not the first drive-up bank.
Okay. When you say drive-up, like we would say a drive-through today?
Yeah. Okay. And it was a separate building. It was connected by a tunnel, which was, you get me to reflect on this, George. This is kind of fun for me, but that tunnel was also designated as a bomb shelter, because you remember that period of time, it was pre-Cuba.
Cuba Missile Crisis.
But it was right around that time, and you had to, and small towns and, in the Midwest, I don't know whether you had them in Memphis, but my sister lives in a home that was built during that time that had a bomb shelter in the basement. Because when we went to school, they told you what to do if there was a nuclear attack in the 60s. So, and that the drive-in was built in that period of time.
Well, I've heard about it, but no, I guess the Memphians just didn't care. I don't recall anybody having bombs.
The thing is, if they're gonna launch a nuclear war, and they're not going to hit a town in Iowa. So,
right.
Probably not.
So they built an actual tunnel, to the drive-through.
Yeah, to the drive-through.
Okay,
and it
was cool.
Yeah, and he found a place to buy a drive-through window, and they kind of celebrated that. But that he grew the bank, but kept it in Iowa Falls until the farm crisis came around in 1980, the early 80s, 84. And we lost a lot of banks during the farm crisis because they made bad loans to farmers.
What was a farm crisis? I'm not as familiar with that.
It had to do with El Nino and high input costs and low cost. There was also, South America started importing or exporting food to the United States, and they took away some export markets.
Gotcha.
And the farmers didn't have any support, and the interest rates went up. That was also
80s.
Yep, 80s. Prime rate went to almost 20%, and farming is really a difficult business because it's low margin. And it's, you have high fixed costs, and you can't control the price of, what you're selling. You're subject to the markets, and there weren't a lot of protections at that time. So a lot of farmers went out of business and consolidated, and you ended up with, some very large farms after that. So a bank in the neighboring community, about 20 miles away, went broke, and there were so many banks going broke that it was hard to sell a small bank. So the FDIC, posted that they were going to put this bank up for auction and to show up at this hotel and make your bid. And my dad and my mother went there, as my dad tells the story, in a hotel in Ames, Iowa, a little bigger city near there. And they sat in the lobby in a couple of chairs and watched for people to come in the door. He said that the FDIC was in there. They were, double-breasted suits, smoking cigarettes, really nervous. And nobody showed up. So he walked in, and at the end of the time, and he said, well, I guess I can have this for $1. And they said, well, no, it's got to be something. So he bought another bank for like $18,000 at that particular time.
Not funny, I'm sure, but it's kind of funny.
Yeah, so that's
wait, but he didn't close his existing bank.
No,
he just was expanding essentially.
He turned it into a branch.
Okay,
yeah.
What kind of because the FDIC, when you do that, they take all the bad debt out, right?
So that's correct.
It's how much assets for $18,000 did he get?
He got about $20 million worth of assets.
That sounds like
he got $20 million worth of deposits.
Yeah.
And they took a lot. They took all of the bad assets.
Yeah.
With them. But it was it was a town that was even smaller than Iowa Falls. And when you do that small towns are kind of, I was going to say they're funny, they're different, but you have to be real careful about the politics of the small towns. So
it's incestuous at times. It can be what I would call a good old boy group. They don't like the town over there.
Yep,
necessarily
exactly.
Coming in and
if you were in Iowa Falls as a young man, you didn't want to go to Clear Lake, Iowa by yourself.
Yeah. Territory.
Yeah,
gotcha.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So they closed it the day before the school system got paid. The school teachers got paid in that town, and so all of their checks bounced, and so they started off on a bad foot.
Yeah, I can see that.
When they were closing the bank, the people actually lined up with lawn chairs outside, and they watched this whole thing happen. Watched the FDIC do it, and my dad take over, and the people from Iowa Falls come. So there was a lot of hostility in that between those. It was probably, I think, if he had his chance to do it again, he probably wouldn't have done it. But
well, still seems like a pretty good buy.
Yeah. If you can stomach that.
So, all right, let's go back. How was your upbringing there?
And it was fantastic. It was, it was a wonderful time.
Yeah.
The 50s, I was born in 49. So I grew up in the 50s and the 60s. And as a young man, it was, we were shooting rockets, putting people in space, headed to the moon.
We just did that yesterday.
Yeah, right. That's pretty cool. No, I didn't, but I'm crossing my fingers that they circle and come back.
It was clean and uneventful.
Did you watch it?
I did. I did. I just happened to be home. It was like at 5:30, but it was kind of neat to see, when, like you talk about that era.
Yeah.
We haven't done something like this in a long time.
Well, and today is, the aviation today, as you probably know, is very different than it was back then. I mean, the computer technique, when they landed on the moon, they were doing it by hand, and they were they were lining up something through a window. They had a dot in a window that they lined up to know, when to touch down and when to turn off the thruster. So that was an incredible event.
A little more tech these days.
Yeah.
But I think if I remember correctly, this has been 54 years since someone has gone this far.
Yeah.
So,
I think they're actually going to go further than anybody because they circle the moon.
But still, it's been that long since someone's attempted this. I think you think about all the innovation in 54 years.
Right, exactly. So I grew up during that period of time, and my uncle worked for NASA in Moffett Field in California, and he ran a wind tunnel to test, different designs of aircraft. And so I was deeply involved in, technology and radio, ham radio, and launching rockets in the backyard, and just had a great time. It was a marvelous time.
Fun time. You play any sports growing up?
Yeah, basketball.
Okay.
Although I was
a tall guy.
I was, but I grew after high school. I was 5'11" when I graduated from high school. I'm 6'4" now. So I missed that part of it. So I was captain of the team. I was captain of the team, but I didn't play much because I was one of the shorter guys. But we had a great team.
6 inches after you quit playing basketball.
Yeah.
I got bigger when I went to college, which may have helped my football. But I'm still 5'10", and that wasn't going anywhere. I played lacrosse.
Yeah.
All right, so you had a great upbringing. Sounds like.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Just kind of go out field parties. I just imagine you socialized in cornfields. Or that is just too big.
No. They called it woodsies.
Woods.
So basically, you would find wood. You wouldn't be in the cornfield.
Yeah.
You'd find some trees. So yeah.
Okay. All right. I got it.
Keggers.
Yeah. That's what we had.
Yeah.
We didn't have corn, so we just put in a field.
Yeah.
That's what we did in high school.
Yeah.
Even in a bigger city, we all ended up in a field with a keg. I don't mind ratting myself out here on this podcast all the time. Okay, so where'd you go to school? Did you leave?
First year I went to community college in Iowa Falls, and then I left and went to the University of Iowa for 3 years, and I graduated from the University of Iowa.
Okay.
Yeah.
Love it. What'd you major in?
I started out in engineering, electrical engineering, and going back to my upbringing during, if you think about all of those, the time when I was a kid, it was baby boomers, and these are young men that came back from World War II that started families, and they weren't macho men necessarily. They didn't talk about the war, but they, 2/3 of them, they did an incredible thing in 4.5 years to fight wars and all over the world, and to start from, I think it said the 7th largest army in the world when World War II broke out. Our country did.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and a lot of these people, my wife's father and my dad, I don't know that my dad had even been out of the state of Iowa. And I know my wife's father had not been out of the state. So,
he got cultured real quick.
Yeah, he got cultured really quick, came back young. And
did he ever go overseas, or he just trained in Puerto Rico? And I'm not discounting that one bit. But
yeah, Kathy's dad fought in the battle.
Was there much there then in Puerto Rico?
There was jungle, and that's what they wanted. That's why he was there.
Really?
Yeah, because they were sending these guys to the Pacific. So,
okay. Got it.
Yeah, so that's what they were.
That makes more sense. I'm thinking like France.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, but everybody, there wasn't a lot of diversity, financial diversity. I mean, it felt like that there weren't any haves or have-nots in the town. And when I came to go to college, it was the Vietnam era, and you were expected to do what your daddy did,
mm-hmm.
and I did not want to do. There was we had people coming back from Vietnam at that time that would tell us what that experience was like, and so my dad and I had a falling out, and he stopped my funding when I went to college. And so I needed money. And
why did you have a falling out?
Because he wanted me to cut my hair and to join the military.
Yeah,
because
you were a long-haired hippie, John?
It touched my collar.
Oh, well, that's
I know. He was pretty conservative.
Okay, all right. He wanted you high and tight.
Yeah, right.
And wanted you to go in the military.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, all right.
So, I was walking down the street in Iowa City, and I literally walked by a bank, and it was the day I found out, I was going to have to do something else. And I thought, I know how to do this, because I grew up in that bank. I mean, I was a teller. I rolled pennies in the vault when I was in kindergarten. They used to have, those little sleeves of pennies.
Yeah.
You used to do that manually. You had a machine, but, you had to
put the little sleeve on.
Yeah. And you put your finger on one side and pounded them down. And I was a janitor. I was, I knew everything about that bank. And so I walked in the First National Bank of Iowa City, and I said I needed a job. And they said, they told me I had to cut my hair. But, that's where I changed my major at that point, or slowly changed my major from engineering.
Was this your dad's bank?
No, it was Iowa City, Iowa, not Iowa Falls. I was going to school at the University of Iowa.
Okay.
So I needed a job.
Got it.
Yeah. And so that's, So I did that while I was going to school. And then
you did that to pay for school.
Yeah, that's right. Right.
To avoid going to the military.
And during the summer, I shoveled asphalt for 3 years. Because going back to small towns, this might be more than you want to know, but during that time we were building the freeways. And so there was a lot of road construction going on, and there was good money in shoveling asphalt or concrete. And so
that sounds like hard work.
Yeah. And there was, I don't remember sunscreen, and I don't remember even having a hat, but, I turned very brown during the summers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got you a good tan to go back for the ladies back at school.
Yeah, exactly. So I did that right out of high school. Actually, the week after I graduated from high school, I was living in a hotel in the middle of Iowa with a bunch of truckers. And I had to grow up pretty fast during that experience too. So, yeah.
That sounds diverse.
Yeah.
All right. So you're working your way through school, shoveling asphalt and working at a bank.
Yeah.
What'd you start at the bank at?
Teller.
Teller? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, he's better than janitor, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it was a part-time job.
So you graduate. Well, you said you changed your major from electrical engineering to what?
Business or finance.
Finance.
Yeah.
Okay. We graduated and then did what? Where'd we go?
Well, before my junior year, I started, actually, Kathy was my sister's best friend, my wife. And my sister set us up. I didn't even know her, actually. And we had a double date when I was 19. And we got to seeing each other kind of slowly at first. It wasn't love at first sight, but she was pretty cool, and she was friendly.
She is cool. I've met her. She's a ball of fun.
Oh man. And she's really practical, and she's helped me a lot, in my life.
Well, that's what a good partner's supposed to do.
And so
why y'all still together.
Yeah.
Props to you, sir.
And so thank you. We got married when I was a junior in college.
Okay.
In the summer between the junior and senior year.
So you're like 2021?
I had to have my parents sign off on it because I wasn't 21 yet.
Okay.
In Iowa, you had to be 21 to get married, or you had to have your parents' permission.
Did you and your dad make up by this point?
That enhanced the whole relationship because he really liked her.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you had to ask him to sign off on it.
Right.
So you at least talk to him about it.
So then, we did things pretty spontaneously. We had a lot of fun. We didn't really plan anything. And all of a sudden we had a child on the way.
Mm-hmm.
And so when
happens like that when you're having fun. Doesn't
it? And so when I graduated, I needed a job because Kathy she was like 3 months pregnant. Oh, actually about 6 months pregnant when I graduated from college.
Okay.
And so my dad said, well, why don't you go to Minneapolis and work for a big bank and come back and work for me in 5 years?
Okay. So clearly, Dad, you made up with Dad.
Yeah.
Better the relationship. If he's offering you a job or trying to coach you into one.
Yeah. We always talked, but we were working on it. And so I went to work for the largest bank in Minneapolis at the time, which was Northwestern National Bank, which later bought Wells Fargo, by the way. People think it was the other way around, but Wells Fargo ran into financial troubles in the 90s, and Norwest, they changed their name to Norwest at the time, was pretty strong, and it bought Wells Fargo and took its name.
Took the brand.
Yeah, took the brand. So I went to work for that bank and went through their training program. Really, a great place to start a career is in a bank as a business banker.
Mm-hmm.
And, I worked in the small business division for 2 years. And
what did that mean then? Because it may have a different context today. But
you had
as a banker.
Yeah. You had relationships and you made loans to business customers.
Okay.
So I started out in the small business area. They gave me these index cards, and there were 300 of them. And they said, these are your accounts, go call on them. And so you were a calling officer, and
with index cards. That's
awesome.
Awesome.
With index cards, and you wrote on the cards when you called them and what you talked about and when you were going to go back again, and you were soliciting deposits and loans and trust business.
Okay, I was going to ask you. So you're trying to get deposits.
Yep.
And maybe entice with the loan,
right?
Possibly if they need it. Okay, so do a little sales.
Yeah,
too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. How'd that go?
It went fantastic. I was I was pretty good at it.
Yeah.
And so
found your little niche, huh?
Yeah. And I was excited about it. And I was also, I was still involved in technology, and I was doing some programming for the bank and wrote some cash flow programs, and they kind of like that.
Wait a second. You did what?
Well,
you just went from sales to writing programming?
I actually did that in the training program. For the first year, I wrote a program on a timeshare computer with a ticker tape on it that the bankers could use when they went in to talk to customers to forecast their cash flow. Huh. And it also, by the way, forecast the probability of bankruptcy too. So they really like that. And that it was just, even though I majored in business, I spent a lot of time at the computer center in my technology background.
Okay.
And wrote some programs in college, and I just knew how to do it. And there was a time-sharing machine sitting in the corner of the training room. And I said, well, why don't we do this instead of trying to do it on a column or pad, let's do it on a computer. And so that's how I wrote that.
So you were kind of estimating profitability and potential failure?
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly. You'd put in what you'd sit down with
like
the client. An
algorithm for it?
Yeah. Yeah. You'd for assets and liability, sales, cost of goods sold, quick ratio, and, a bunch of other ratios that you would put in there. And you'd say, okay, if this business takes on this amount of debt, here's what they're going to have to do. And they're going to have to maintain these margins, and here's what their leverage is going to look like in 4 or 5 years. And ultimately, that's how you either approve the loan and priced it.
Intriguing.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're doing kind of sales, but also the tech side a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
So after 4 years of doing that and, working with businesses, calling on them, and which was fascinating. They said, well, we need a marketing department for the business banking end of the bank. So I started a marketing, area, for the commercial bank and trust and international, hired people and built that up. And we did, we did all sorts of promotional things, and we did market research, and we developed products and that sort of thing. I did that for 4 years.
This was still in business banking?
Yep. All business banking.
What unique things were you coming up with to solicit clientele?
Well, we had one of the most fun or memorable things. We had hired Alan Greenspan and Arthur Brennan to come to Minneapolis and to debate monetary versus fiscal policy. And, I had a big event with our clients, hired or rented the largest theater in downtown Minneapolis and had these guys debate monetary versus fiscal policy. It was during a period of time when there was inflation was quite high during that time. And so this is, it was, and it led up to, the interest rates being extremely high too in the 80s as we talked about. So we did that. We also, in terms of products, we developed a retail lockbox product. So, when you send your money in to pay your gas bill, you wrote checks back then, and it wasn't electronic. That money went to a P.O. box that was controlled by the banks, or a bank. And so, you needed to process those checks. We developed that product and priced it. We developed entered Canada, created offices throughout Canada. We also developed a department that dealt with energy and put an office in Denver to make energy loans.
So you're really expanding.
It was a great job. It was a great bank. It was great people. And I learned an awful lot during that period of time.
It sounded like they gave you a lot of leadway.
Yeah.
It sounds like a massive bank at the time, but at the same time, giving you a lot of leeway to just go get some.
Yeah. They didn't let me write very large loans. When it was but they did. They gave you.
They let you market.
They let me market, write papers and things like that. So it was a lot of fun.
All right. So what'd you do after that?
So in 1980, came around the Monetary Control Act of 1980 that deregulated what banks could pay on savings accounts. Prior to that, you could only pay 5.25% on daily savings, which seems really high today, but interest rates were higher back then.
Oh, my dad always reminds me he bought his first house for like 17%.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
So I think that's right.
Yeah. Well,
that's that era, right? But
right.
There where they were in the teens.
Yeah. And so, yep. Yeah. That's true. It was probably, was that in the 80s, early 80s when he did that?
Early 80s.
Yeah. And even then, this was a little bit before that, but even then, like in 74, the mortgage rates were like 8 or 10%. Was the cheapest you could get was like 8 or 10.
Not that I've seen that either. I was like, it's alive at that time because I was a baby when he bought that house. But like her generation, she's never seen anything over 6%.
Yeah.
And that's why the last 2 years have been,
yeah.
But gentlemen like yourself who've been around the block in the banking world for a minute, like,
Well, the other part of that is that because I worked for a bank, I could get a mortgage. And, you still had to qualify for it, but you could get a mortgage and they give you a little bit of a discount on it. So you could own a home. We bought our first home when we were, 22, 23 years old in Minneapolis. And at the same time, there was a lot of inflation that went on. So that you ended up with a lot of equity in your home, because you were leveraged as an individual. So we bought that home and then we sold it and bought another home. And when it came around to 1980, when I had this idea to start a business, we had a lot of equity in our home that we could gamble on starting the business. So,
capitalize.
Yeah.
So you started to talk about the act that limited the savings. Where are we going there?
So I went into the president of the bank, and I was 30 years old at the time. And I said, it was on my birthday. It was December 28th. And I said,
now I remember your birthday, so I can wish you happy birthday.
Okay. And I said, I have this idea because, for banks setting interest rates, now that they were free to set interest rates, you didn't know really whether that rate got you more deposits or not, or, if you went the interest rate on a 6-month certificate, if you paid 5%, how much more in deposits did you really get that you wouldn't have already gotten versus 7%, 8%, 4%, or whatever. And people are
really gaining you business and
there was no model for that. I said, well, one way we could do this is that if we could get all of the banks together and share information, they could tell me the number of accounts, the number of dollars that they have in each type, and I'll add them up and send to each bank their share of the market. So it was a cooperative exchange of data between banks. And I said, I think I could get that done.
Like a market share report?
Yeah.
But how would that, help me understand, how would that
give
you how much?
So I would know if for my 6 months certificates of deposit, if I paid the average of the market rate and I didn't change market share, okay. If I paid more than 7%, but my market share didn't really go up, there's an algorithm, there's a math.
That. Yeah. Okay.
Or if I paid 4%, and in reality, a lot of banks, people don't, once they get into a bank, they don't change their banking relationship very much, especially.
It's even harder today.
Well, especially older people. And the median age of a dollar in a bank is about 80 years old. So half of the dollars are controlled by people who are over the age of 80. And
really? Today?
Yeah.
Does that hold true today?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
Because, banking is a business where a simple business, you take money from older people and you give it to younger people is what it's.
So the cash on hand deposits.
Yeah.
Over half are 80 years and above.
Yeah. On the dollars. The dollars. Not the number of people, obviously.
Yeah. But just the dollars. Okay. All right.
So you become a net, on average, you become a net provider to the banking system when you're somewhere in 55 to 60 years of age. So you end up having more money in the bank than you owe. Yeah. And
so you're saying I'm a taker, not a giver right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And these are averages. So averages are skewed. They're skewed by. So
did you do this? Did they back you?
So he said, I was kind of wrangling for more money, a bigger title or whatever, as well as I had this idea. And I always kind of wanted to start a business, but I was pretty good. I wouldn't call him a friend, but I mean, I dealt with him every day. So we had a really good relationship. And he said, John, that's a great idea. He said, you can work here part-time while you start it. You can have your job back if it doesn't work, and I'll write you letters of recommendation. And I went home and I said, hey, Kathy, we gotta have a conversation here. I think I quit. And,
yeah. And how many kids do you have at this point?
2.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 and a mortgage.
Hey, honey, I think I quit.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
I think I quit.
Yeah. So that would never happen today. But, so we did that. We set that up in Minneapolis, and we had like 14 banks in Minneapolis.
So is that, I didn't mean to cut you off, but this is, I guess, considered an international. This is a significantly large bank, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So they're not just regional.
Correct. Yeah. At that time, they were in probably 7 states.
Okay.
But all Midwestern. Now, as Wells Fargo, they are.
They're all over.
Yeah.
And they didn't have the massive, I mean, you had some, but like they do today. But I mean, you were talking about going to Canada and expanding and branches and stuff. So this is a pretty big bank to play with.
It is. Okay. It is a big bank. Yeah.
Okay.
And so we, and this, by the way, at the time that we did this, there were no microcomputers. There was no Apple. There was no fax machines. There was no FedEx. Computing was very expensive. Mm-hmm. So we did this for like 14 banks in the Twin Cities area, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota. And we did it in Maryland and Virginia and Washington, D.C., because I had some contacts there. And my contacts said, hey, yeah, why don't you come here and do it? So we did it for about 20 banks out there.
So for it to work, like you would need you couldn't just get one bank in Washington, D.C. as a client.
Right.
You'd need at least a pool of
Yeah, you'd want
5 to 10 or
you want to have over half of the deposits represented.
Okay.
Yeah. So there were 2 problems with that business model. One, you just mentioned, it's, you can only price it to the lowest denominator, the lowest person that, and the, that's providing you data. I mean, the larger banks did pay more, but, you always wanted to keep the second tier of banks involved in it. Mm-hmm. And some people don't want to know their market share because that stuff would go to the board and they would go, hey, you're not doing well as, you're paying too much. And so they just didn't want to know it.
That's crazy to me.
And the other thing is that it was all done on paper, and we had monthly reports, but we were timesharing at the University of Minnesota, which was really expensive. And, but we did this for 4 or 5 years, but about 6 months into it, I said, I sat down with a friend, a banker, and I said, Mike, here's the situation. I mean, this is really untenable. And he said, he later on told me this is what he told all of his clients whenever they had a conversation with the guys. He said, well, you better do something different. And so we started doing surveys and opinion polls, and we made more money off of that than we ever did in my original idea. So we were interviewing corporate treasurers. This is all about business banking. It's about security control and movement systems. It's about cash management systems. It's about the stuff that I really knew about. And I had quite a bit of knowledge in that area, and I didn't have there wasn't a lot of competitors nationally.
So you're polling the clients to give the bank feedback?
Yep.
Okay.
Business corporate treasurers.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
So the market share thing, did it kind of die off?
It died off, but it took about 5 years for it to die off. But
I mean, you can get a market share report now, touch of a button. Yeah. But definitely see the value. So you were just maybe too cutting edge there for that.
Yeah. Well, it was, like I said, it was before the technology allowed us to do it efficiently. Today, you could probably do that because you just get a feed from the bank with a data feed.
I'll tell you, there are companies that do it.
Yeah.
Well, at least in our industry, there is. And I'm sure banks have them.
Yeah. Who's that does it in your industry?
Local. Well, in Florida, it's called MMT.
Yeah.
Metro Market Trends.
Okay. Yeah.
But they use the clerk of court data.
Okay.
So you can see, who's closing what,
Right.
percentage of mortgage, houses. I mean, I got all kinds of crazy data.
Yeah. Right.
But it's all, it's all computer touch of a button, not manually doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the cost effectiveness is a lot different.
Yeah.
So, all right. So you started the survey stuff. What was your company called?
Originally, Market Trends, actually. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And, but there ended up being another company called Market Trends in California that was bigger than we were, although they started later, and they did all sorts of bank market research. And so we eventually decided to change our name, and it's called Barlow Research now.
Okay.
And it still exists. It's a great company. I'm still active about half the time in it. Okay. And it's located in Minneapolis. We have about 22 people. We have some of them are scattered out in the United States. And
well, don't jump forward too much. How'd we grow? Did you stay focused on the survey stuff?
Yeah, but it was a different period of time.
Uh-huh.
One of my favorite memories of that period of time, when my friend said, "You got to do something different," we were operating out of the basement of our house, and Kathy bought an IBM Selectric typewriter with a little ball on it that turned back and forth.
We still have them at the office.
Really?
Believe it or not, we actually sometimes, rarely, but have to type something on a mortgage.
Yeah.
So we still have to have a typewriter around.
So she would type reports, and she would type, letters and proposals, and downstairs in the basement of the house, and I would go out and travel around and try to get business. And I was in the breakthrough happened in New York City. It was before Christmas, a couple of days before Christmas, but it was a Friday. And I would go out for like a week at a time and go. And that time you could call on good banks. I'd try to make 4 calls a day. You could never do that today. First of all, they're never in the same location, but there was a heavy concentration in New York. So I knew we had to break into New York, and I knew it had to be San Francisco too. And, which were the 2 banking centers. This is before Charlotte came along as a banking center. But, it was right before Christmas. It was the last call of the day. It was a 7:00 flight out of LaGuardia back to Minnesota. So this is about 4 p.m. And most of the people in the building had gone home. And so it's really quiet. It gets dark earlier in New York, especially in the winter, because they're a little further in the time zone. Mm-hmm. So it's dark outside. I'm talking to this guy. I'd never met him before. And, I'm giving him my pitch, sweating at the brow, trying to, this is survival time for us. I mean, we got to make the mortgage. And he's just sitting there listening, and he says, "John, I have one problem with you." And I thought, oh God, here it comes. And he said, "I need an invoice today to take the money out of the budget." He said, "I don't know what we're going to do, what project we'll do, but I need an invoice for $30,000, but I need it today. And I happen to be carrying stationery in my briefcase." And I said, "Well, your secretary is gone. Can I use her typewriter?" And I went over and I typed up the invoice and I gave it to him, and he sent us $30,000 this was probably, I hope I didn't name the bank, but it's probably, it is now it was a different bank at that time, but it is now JP Morgan Chase. And that person, we got that check. He had 2 projects for us.
But he didn't commit. He just he sent you the money, but didn't commit to a project yet.
Correct. Never happened today. Today,
he must have really liked you.
Yeah.
No, it wouldn't happen today.
No, but, today we deal with sourcing departments. We have, master service contracts. You decide to do business with a new client. It takes 6 months to get the business because you have to go through all of this. But because of that, New York is, which I know you go there very often. It's in the banking world, it's a very small town. They all know each other, and they still know each other, and they talk, and they kibitz a lot. And so we broke into New York, into the market research, business banking market research. And we ended up dealing with, 5 or 6 of the largest banks in the country. And we ended up doing joint projects between them. They'd say, "Hey, John, can you get us to, we all want to answer the same question. Can you do this?" And we'll all throw in some money. And so, yeah.
So what? I guess multiple questions. What two products did he ask for the $30,000? You said he asked for two products. What did he ask for?
They were cash management products. They were.
So you're surveying
corporate treasurers.
The bank's paying you to survey clients.
Yeah, and not actually clients. I mean, at that time we were getting a D&B list, and we still do that. And so we were doing a Dun & Bradstreet.
Okay.
Yeah. So they have a record of all of the businesses in the United States. And so we'd buy those records, and we would survey them by telephone. Actually, we'd call them up, say, "Can we talk to your treasurer?" And we'd have a successful interview about 1 out of every 10 to 20 calls. This is back in 1980. So
people still picked up the phone.
Yeah, they picked up the phone.
So you're calling correct me if I'm wrong, like the CFO today?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
of a business.
Of a business.
Okay.
Yeah.
So and you call me and survey me.
Well, if you're a CFO, but you're probably not your CFO.
No, I have one, but
yeah, right.
If you called her,
right,
you're asking her about the interaction with the bank's cash management.
Yes, right.
Okay.
And where they bank, how many times the bankers
make
called
sure the people out here listening to you, John. This is interesting.
Yeah. And if truth told that the CFO or treasurer job is a lonely job in a company, they're not making widgets, or they're not closing, title work, or they're keeping track of the money, and they got their their own world there. And actually, they don't like people to mess with their world too much, to change. Hey, why don't you do something, make payments a little different?
I know that type of personality, sir.
Yeah. And
so does that make it easier?
Easier.
A lot they want to talk to you and give feedback.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's make it easier.
Okay. Interesting. Okay.
And they're very paper-based, and they're very forms-based. We do an economic pulse survey every quarter, which is a one-page survey that we send out today, and they can fill it out online. They can send it back in the mail, or they can fax it back. Almost half of the responses come by fax.
Today,
yeah, because corporate treasurers are still very paper based. They're very compliance based, and they're just used to filling out forms.
Well, funny or not, in our world, because of fraud, a lot of especially the big lenders, we still get most of our payoffs via fax.
Oh,
because it's harder to hack.
Yep.
Stupid as that sounds.
Yeah. Right.
So, all right. So you give me an example of what you would do if several banks in New York asked you back then to work together. What are they asking you?
There were very specific questions. One is probably as an example. They all spend a lot of money at what is now called AFP, or Association of Financial Professionals. So that time is called the National Cash Management Association. They have a big conference, Las Vegas or someplace, every year, and all of the banks go, and they have big parties, and they spend a ton of money to, woo these corporate treasurers. And so they were all saying to themselves, this is ridiculous. Why are we spending all of this money on these big parties? And, one of them that I went to was in Los Angeles, and they went out to Disney, and the bank sponsored it. They had all these characters dressed up like Clint Eastwood, and, lots of beverages, and, enormous amounts of money. And so they said, why don't we see if any of these corporate treasurers really remember which one they remembered, which was most effective, and which one changed their idea of doing business. So there was like 10 or 12 banks that all pitched in money and had us survey treasurers and ask them which ones went to that conference, and what they remembered. And you might guess, this is a long time ago. I don't think I'm telling anything out of school, but it doesn't. A lot of those things aren't really very effective. And the one that they remembered,
I don't think they're effective today.
Yeah, the one they remembered the most was, some guy had a heart attack, but he lived through it. But they carried him out of the party, and everybody knew that one. But the rest of them were kind of,
they put that in the survey. The guy had a heart attack.
But there were other things that there was a large one. It was 1995, actually. It was right at the beginning of the internet. And the banks then and even today have tried to figure out how to take the human out of the relationship, because the human cost of people calling on, John Barlow with 300 index cards and, now a computer and calling on customers is pretty expensive. And can we do it less expensively? And so what customers the question that we were asked was, what customers will deal with a bank without a person, without a relationship? And so there were 11 banks in that consortium.
Well, do you remember so this is mid-90s?
Yeah.
Will you remember what some of the answers were? I'm just curious now.
Businesses wanted to deal with people.
Yeah.
They wanted, the internet was far out of it just wasn't going to work.
Even today, I mean, I have a pretty massive banking relationship based on what I do. And, our cash management system is very efficient, which creates efficiencies on my side. But if I have a problem, and I know everybody doesn't have this luxury, I pick up the phone and call somebody. I want to talk to them. I want them to tell me they're on this.
Right.
And I do that in many businesses, not just banking. That's been taken away, that personal customer relationship.
Right.
So were you an early adopter of the Windows and the intranet?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did you shift your platform as technology grew?
Well, we always dealt with something that was, we always had the idea that if you put a group of banks together, you could make more money. They're all addressing the same problem. So we started what we called membership research. And we had a program for small business, and we had a program for middle market. Small business market is companies with sales from 100,000 to 10 million. There are about 7 million of them in the United States. There are 30 million in corporations are companies, but most of them, 23 million of those are under 100,000. The sales are kind of gig work or they're, whatever. And there are a couple thousand that are above 10 million all the way up to, 500 million. And so we studied those two markets, and we do that today. And every quarter we survey 6,000 of those businesses, 4 and 2. And we produce reports that tell those banks what their market share is, and how their brand is rated, and what their calling officers, how many are called on, how satisfied, what their net promoter score is, and all sorts of other data.
So you went back to producing market share.
Yeah, although this is relationship market share rather than the Market Trends was a consumer product. It was kind of our one and only consumer banking product. We're dealing with relationship.
Why would it be a consumer product?
Because consumers are the ones that, it could be a business product, but most of the deposits in the bank are from consumers or small businesses.
But if I'm the bank, I would want that information to see my market share.
Yeah, yes? you would on the consumer, but you're going to get it. You wouldn't get it from us because we kind of abandoned. We focused only on business banking.
Just business. So you're doing the small business. You have a small business report of market share for the banks and a large medium business.
Right. And then we have a digital business banking product too, which evaluates the digital delivery systems of banks.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're surveying people on their cash management?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. What they're using, what's important on the internet banking. I mean, do you need to have ACH initiation on your internet banking? We do a lot on how accounts are opened. You would think that'd be a simple thing, but it's very complicated because of compliance things. And the banks are trying to automate that. They've been trying to automate it for 10 years. So if you go to a non-bank, they have a different set of rules, and you can open up a PayPal account, a Venmo account, instantly.
Yeah.
If you're a business and you go to a bank, you got a whole different set of rules, and you have multiple signers on those accounts and multiple authorities. And
I'm well aware.
Yeah,
I don't know. They make it pretty damn easy for the fraudsters to open the bank, but that's probably a whole nother podcast, John.
It is, but fraud is a huge problem in banking.
So, rabbit hole real quick. We got a call, and this is multiple banks, I guess nationally, where the fraudsters are now trying to call businesses specifically, and they're loaded with a certain amount of information.
Yep.
And they're trying, and they have had success in people giving them their token, their individual token, to get into their cash management.
Oh, yeah.
It's just, I mean, we're a little more high alert because of what we do, but and not a little more, we're very high alert. So I would say we wouldn't be susceptible. We're susceptible to the phone call, but it's pretty astonishing the information they can get and the knowledge they have about the phone call they're making. It's just crazy. The fraud is insane to me.
Yeah, the AI.
I am plugged in on that pretty well.
AI is going to make that a lot easier for them and harder for the rest of us. But.
So y'all are national, right?
Right.
Okay.
9 of the 10 largest banks in the United States use Barlow Research.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. It amazes me.
Huh? Well, I mean, 30 years old, you decided to go.
You just keep doing it.
Doing trend reports.
Doing it, and listening.
Good for you, brother.
Yeah, and listening to your customers.
So tell me, now we're coming into, the era of George's business career. So now I'm curious, how was the recession for your business?
We've had to reinvent which one. I mean,
so let's say 2008. Well, did the, I guess, refi boom or the early .com affect y'all?
It every time the banking industry sort of shoots itself in the foot, about every 10 or 12 years.
I could cut that out for you if you feel like that's inappropriate for your company.
No, but it sets up because we have a vulnerability because we're so heavily concentrated in the banking industry. And that's why we used to do proprietary research, and that's why we turned and really formalized the membership or the syndicated research, because it's contractual and, they sign a contract for a year. But
do you think you've been involved in this world for some time now? Banks they're all trying to make money. They're all trying to benefit their shareholders. And, there's just like in any business, there's some better than others. But don't you think government policy has a lot of effect on some of what they do and how they maybe, as you said, shoot themselves in the foot?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean,
like the 2008 recession, dramatically affected this area because of a lot of second home investment. People were making money hand over fist, and then all went to hell in a handbasket. When we were in it here, real estate wise, before the rest of the country knew there was a problem. But the loosening up of the purse strings by the government allowed that to happen to some extent. And then the government's like, but anyway, that's probably another soapbox. How did y'all reinvent yourselves? What do you mean by that? With a subscription type stuff?
Yeah, with the subscription.
When did that happen?
I mean, we're probably like 3 chapters in Barlow Research. And the first one was proprietary. The second one, which led up to 2008, was, we would take customer lists from a bank and we would send them out. We'd do something called a customer relationship audit. And that is, we'd do it for individual banks, and we were probably doing it for 10 or 12 banks at that particular time. And we would evaluate their calling officer. We'd take this right down to their calling officers, and each calling officer would get a report and we'd score them. And that was a great business until 2008. And if you remember 08.
I remember. Yeah. It's hard to forget.
Yeah. Things went pretty nuts at that particular time.
Yeah. But I feel like some of the research you provide is even that much more important in that time.
You would think it would be, but at that time, all of those, we were dealing with just the top banks, and all of a sudden they started to, we dealt with Wells Fargo and Wachovia, and Wells ended up buying Wachovia. We had Washington Mutual and Chase ended up taking over Washington Mutual. Who am I missing? Nations Bank, and I can't remember. I'm going to miss the name, so I won't. But Nations Bank merged into, Bank of America.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so all of those were clients of ours. And so all of a sudden we woke up one day and we had half the volume.
Ah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
And even on a good day, we had half the volume, because after that, then they became so big that they started to do the surveys internally. And the internet was there, and they had tools to do it themselves. So they took our idea and they started to do it. And we still do that customer relationship audit for several banks. But at that particular point in time, we said, okay, let's do this. Let's go back to the Dun & Bradstreet list, and let's interview them and send them their non-customers, customers and non-customers, and we'll send back their share and all of the other measures, not just interviewing their customers only.
So that's chapter 3, if you will.
Yeah, that's chapter 3.
Were you coming here at that time yet? Were you visiting in this area?
Yep.
So I don't know if you're aware, but with that, just made me think of it, because I had one of these loans, the Wells Fargo Wachovia. Walton County had been so leveraged by Wachovia, Wells Fargo wouldn't lend money here for a period of time at all. There was a black X in Walton County. It's crazy. I mean, it's silly times, but not silly times, just tough times. Yeah. But hey, you and I are still here. So, all right, you came out of the recession, kind of changed the model to chapter 3.
Yeah.
And you still have the subscription stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. And you're soliciting customers for their feedback for the banks.
Right.
Right. And that's what we've done year to date.
Yeah. That's, there. Yep. And, so 5 years ago, because I was born in 49, this can't go on forever. And
come on, John.
Yeah. Although I feel like it should. My dad did worked right up to the end, but, I might have to do that too. But
you want to enjoy the fruits of your labor and walk around and enjoy the beautiful place you get to live in too.
Yeah. And we love it here. Yeah. Absolutely love it. But so 5 years ago, I said about, we have many employees that have been there a long time, but 3 kind of key ones. And I said, okay, if you want to buy part of the business, here's the deal. And so we set up a deal where they over a 5-year period of time, each year they bought 15%. And so they own 75% of it now, and we own 25% of it.
Congratulations. Has that been good for everybody?
Oh, it's been fantastic. They're more conservative than I was, and I've tried to get them to, why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? But they run a very tight ship. They make more money than I did.
Well, that's good for you. You can make a little extra. You still got a percentage.
Yeah. But I still meet with them every Monday, and we have a meeting this afternoon actually with them, the leadership team, to discuss some issues. And we do an annual conference with all of our clients, and it's May 5th. It's in Charlotte this year, and so I'll go to that. And I used to be very active as a speaker, but now I just hang out and schmooze with the clients and
let your neighbors talk you into doing podcasts.
Yeah, there you go.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, hey, you're again enjoying the fruits of your labor. I think it's amazing. So you raised your family and everything in Minneapolis, right?
Right.
How'd you find this place?
Good 30A Music Festival.
Really?
Yeah. Songwriters Music Festival.
Okay.
And back up from that, actually, Kathy, she had a degree in art and design. And so she's been very interested in, urbanization, and she read about Seaside. And so it's February and said, or January actually, said, let's get out of Minneapolis for a week. And so we came down here. It was the very first Songwriters Festival, but we missed it. We were here the week after the Songwriters Festival. And so said, well, this is kind of cool. And by the way, the prices are pretty good. The place is 80% empty during the winter months, which we didn't understand at all. Why would the beach not be full of people from the Midwest or from other areas?
Because it's cold.
I know. But
people
not
like to go swim
not to
in
us.
That cold water.
When we brought our grandchildren down here in January, and they went into the water, and the people on the beach were going, "What are these people are crazy?" And they were going, "Hey, it's great time." So then we did it again and again and again, and year after year, and we started going to the Songwriters Festival. And we haven't been to it for a couple of years, but that's what got us here. And when we were here probably 3 times, so we're up to like 2010, and I remember going out in the morning outside, and I heard a saw and a radial saw, and somebody was building a house. And I came back in, and I said, "Hey, Kathy, somebody's building a house," and because construction had pretty much stopped, and so we got kind of to looking at real estate, and then finally decided, well, if we're ever going to do it, we might as well buy a home. We bought one in watercolor, and we did that in 2000, right before the pandemic. The pandemic hit, place went nuts. We got, my God, this isn't anything like it was when we're here in January for a week.
Yeah. Wait, you bought in watercolor when?
2000. It was right at the beginning right before the pandemic.
Okay. 2019?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, about then.
Got it.
And then the pandemic hit, and
it went nuts.
And it went nuts. The prices went up, and so we just had to get out of there.
Yeah.
And,
it's awesome, but I was, of course, here, and the watercolor specifically.
Yeah.
It's like everybody that was blocked up in Atlanta and other places, even Memphis, just packed their families up and moved to watercolor.
Yeah.
Which, it's good for our economy. But for those that are here full time, made it a little crowded down there.
Yeah.
Now, do you guys go back and forth?
We do it in the summer. We'll go back on May 15th, and then, we'll be back here on September 15th.
Kids and family still there in that area?
Kids and family are still there.
So Minneapolis has gotten some bad press recently. How is it for you?
Well, my family is very tuned into what's going on in Minneapolis. First of all, my daughter's a school teacher.
Really?
And she teaches people with where English is not the first language.
Okay.
So, and it's in the public school system, and there are, there is not just one country. It's a very diverse place. And Minneapolis, the city of Minneapolis is actually, Minneapolis is probably 3 million people or something like that. And I'm going to guess the city is probably 750. So the suburbs around it are a lot bigger than the city itself. And then you got St. Paul, also. When I said Minneapolis, the suburbs, I'm including St. Paul in that. So, but the inner cities are really diverse places. And the whole thing that with ICE was pretty traumatizing for people that live there, and
sure.
still is.
Yeah.
But if you get out into the suburbs, you wouldn't know what was going on.
So it's mainly concentrated in the city.
Yeah, it's the suburbs are
crap we see on the TV.
Yeah, yeah, and we can have some offline conversations, but there's some real estate reasons why, historically, that went into those deeds that segregated some of the neighborhoods in Minneapolis. Do you ever run into that before? Where it's in a deed says you can't sell this house to somebody that is of a certain nationality or color? Do you ever see that?
Yes, I've seen those. I started my career in North Mississippi.
Yeah.
So, but there's anti-discrimination laws against that now that basically extinguish them.
Yeah.
Federal level.
Yeah.
The only thing you can really, and discriminate's the right word, limit is age.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like Margaritaville. The 55 plus communities, you can still do that. Anything else is pretty much, you can slap a restriction on any deed. I had this conversation, with a realtor recently of like, well, how do you do this? I'm like, it was his property. He owned it. If you sold your house tomorrow and, as long as it isn't against the restrictive covenants that, I don't want any, blueberry plants on my property. When I just pulled that out of thin air.
Yeah.
Well, John Gardens.
Yeah.
He works in his yard, unlike me. So
it's the farm thing.
I gotcha. But you could do that. But, any of those things, you can't legally do today, or they're not enforceable. Let me put it that way.
Yeah,
but I've definitely seen that.
And
it's interesting though.
They don't do them now, but as a result, you had neighborhoods that were
they abided by them
that became segregated in the Twin Cities area. So they're concentrations of different.
Interesting.
And then the diversity with the Somalis, as an example, which isn't the largest, immigrant population in Minneapolis by any means. A lot of those populations were brought in because of the churches.
Yeah.
And they'd say, they were, trying to do a good deed and did. I mean, those populations are pretty well integrated. I mean, Minneapolis is a great place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's good for you to say that. I think it was the Somali thing specifically. I don't care who you are, what you are, race, creed, color, from, but you're always going to have bad apples.
Mm-hmm.
I think, but the whole fraud thing is it's a little baffling, the numbers that are being thrown around. And I'm sure the truth is somewhere.
Yeah. The truth is somewhere. It might be somewhere else.
And if it is going back overseas with, if it's the state of Minnesota's dollars, I think that's disappointing. We shouldn't have that anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, didn't bring up a bad subject, but you built your whole business there. I was curious for your opinion.
Yeah.
But you still go back there and your family there.
Still have a house there. Still have a house there on Lake Minnetonka. It's a wonderful place.
Well, see, this is where you're okay with the cold water.
Yeah.
What, Lake Minnetonka? How is that? That sounds very
Minnetonka. It's kind of like, it's the biggest lake that's in the Twin Cities area, and it's lots of shoreline, lots of restaurants, lots of boats.
Boating.
We grew up in we're a sailing family, so we race sailboats.
Really?
And
there pictures you a sailor.
Oh, that was my passion for a long time.
I feel like sailing, you have to. I guess the racing's a little different, but I feel like you have to have nowhere to really be quickly. Is that
for sailing?
Yeah.
No, that's pretty true.
Yeah. But you're relying on God and wind.
Yeah. But the only reason why, the thing about racing,
I have a power boat.
The thing about racing sailboats is that it gives you a reason to go someplace.
Yeah.
And otherwise, the boat would sit at the dock most of the time. I mean, even our power boat today, we have at the dock is, we use like 3 times a year, and then it's ridiculous. But
really,
it's kind of, yeah. They do. And our grandkids are all teenagers, and
they're all
ski
busy or anything.
No, they're all busy they got friends. They used to be at the lake every weekend.
Mm-hmm.
We go swimming, and
we're in that stage.
You're still there.
Yeah.
Right? That's a precious stage. I love that time.
Just recently, it's, they used to go out of the boat, but I'm starting to have teenagers. They're like, I'm going to go do this.
Yep.
So I'm right there.
Right.
Starting to experience that with my oldest.
And, I would stay here longer, in Santa Rosa Beach if it wasn't for Kathy says, let's go back. We need to be near the grandkids. And, but the grandkids, they got stuff going on all the time, and it's a stretch to get them to, to get together every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks. So,
do they come visit?
They one family does, the other doesn't. But
okay.
But I have a meeting, a Zoom meeting with my 4 grandkids the third Sunday of every month. And we just it's for an hour, and we talk about investing. And I give them I give them a little money, and every month, and I'm trying to teach them about the difference between dollar cost averaging into an ETF versus evaluating a company. And these kids are from 13 to 19, and the 19-year-old is in college, and the 13-year-old is the rest of them are high school, junior, and sophomore. Or freshman. And they have taught me about, a couple of years ago, my grandson said, Grandpa, why don't we put some money into, put some of they each have their own account. Said, I'm thinking about putting some money into NVIDIA. I said, well, let's look at their balance sheet, their profit and loss statement, and their leverage and their PE ratio and their beta and, all that sort of. I said, Cash, I think this is a high PE, and I don't know about this thing. And, what happened to NVIDIA. But, so.
Did he do it?
No, he didn't. I talked him out of it.
Oh.
Yeah. But.
Grandpa.
But I've learned about peptides from these kids. And do you know about peptides?
I take them every day.
Do you?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the youngest is really into cosmetics and, retail. And every time she comes to Santa Rosa Beach, we go out to the discount stores there.
The outlet stores?
Yeah. We go to, she was just here a couple of weeks ago. We went to,
you went to Ulta.
we didn't go, that's cosmetics, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I have been in there, but not this time.
I'm very familiar with that.
This time I bet you are. This time we were looking at purses.
Oh, okay.
So we were looking at Coach and Kate Spade
of course.
And Corey, whatever
keeping you young and knowledgeable, sir.
Oh man, it's fantastic. I love it. So
that's really cool. You do that. So you give them a little bit of money, and y'all talk investments,
right?
And have they seen some success?
Or do they invest? They outperform the S&P last year.
Really?
Yeah.
Do they all have like a Ameritrade or some kind of account? Or
Fidelity.
Okay. Yeah.
They each have a Fidelity account.
Yeah. That's invaluable.
Yeah.
John. I mean, I wish somebody did that with me. My dad didn't know any better.
It's invaluable for me. I mean, it's just it gives me a connection to them too.
Yeah. And you're keeping it.
Yeah.
They bring some youth into your life. You give some knowledge into theirs. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
So talking about the banking, what do you think about the future of our banking system?
Well, hey, it's going to change. It has, it might have been the last major business not the last, but it hasn't changed as much as you would have thought it would have. I mean, the people relationship is still extremely important in business banking, but, there are, blowing in the wind. There are things ahead of us that there's the banking industry has changed a lot with private credit.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of loans to companies. I mean, if you look at some of the casinos, some of the highly leveraged business software, I mean, they are more likely to be financed by private credit operations, which is really an unregulated bank today, and the banks will loan them money to in turn to loan because they can get there's some
private equity stuff.
Private equity and by private credit, I'm talking about loans. I mean, private equity has been around for a long time, but private credit has really just boomed in the last several years. So
interesting.
Yeah.
What about like the what is it? I think Ally's one of them. These very tech focused
fintechs.
Banks.
Well, a lot of bankers thought that Square, when they first started doing the merchant processing, were a bunch of fools and they were going to go out of business. And, look what they've done. And PayPal and Venmo, which is part of PayPal, and all of those fintechs. I mean, they've captured a good portion of the payment system. I mean, you go to farmers market in Seaside now, and, you pull out a credit card and they can say, don't you have cash or Venmo?
Yeah.
And, they won't charge you for Venmo, but they will for, they add 3%.
3% now.
Yeah.
But PayPal's even gotten into some aspects of the banking.
Mm-hmm.
Haven't they? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. So.
Yeah. Well, so it's an industry that's going to change. I don't know when the next shot in the foot is going to happen, but it probably has. It really concerns me about private credit.
For the banking
happening.
Industry?
Yeah, because banks don't go out of business because they go broke. They go out of business because of liquidity.
Yeah.
Even Lehman Brothers and, in the Great Recession, that was probably the biggest one. I mean, they still had a positive net worth. They just had a run on them. And 80% of bank deposits can reprice within a day. So they're either DDA or within 6 months. So when interest rates go up, you got to make sure that your assets on the other side, if you got a whole bunch of mortgages and they don't reprice, you're going to have a liquidity problem because you're not going to be able to pay the price for those deposits to support the mortgages. And it ends up being an asset liability problem. And we're setting ourselves up for one of those kind of indirectly by these private credit operations because, you can go to.
What would that be?
If you go to Fidelity, you can invest Fidelity prime rate fund. So it's like a cash management fund, but they in turn take that money and make loans to casinos, software companies, et cetera, that are, in that particular case, they're at variable rates, supposedly at variable rates. But if some of those, if you get there was a company just recently called, I think it was Blue Owl, that was a private credit operation that had a run on them, and they had to sell a block of their loans at a discount because their depositors, the people that had those accounts, wanted their money right away, and they didn't have the liquidity to pay them. So that, we're a little out of whack in terms of assets and liabilities.
You think that's problematic because they're unregulated?
That's
part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, that's part of it. And it's, it's just like back in the 2008 days, or 2008, when you're talking about where we had collateralized debt obligations, CDOs and CDOs squared, and then they had synthetic securities. And, there's part of the industry that needs to be regulated. And when, the problem with all of those is that, when the liquidity problem happened, there was no market, or there was only a market price for them. They were worth something, but nobody knew what they were worth because they were all derivatives of derivatives and of derivatives, and which is something that happened in the mortgage. It all started in the mortgage business. At the bank I worked at Norwest Bank. It was in the 70s where somebody first said, "Hey," they had a big mortgage company, and they said, "If we strip off the interest payments on this, we could sell just." Because they were in Des Moines, the mortgage operations in Des Moines, where a lot of insurance companies were too. They said, we'll take the interest payments off of these mortgages and we sell the interest payments, and we'll sell the first 5 years of the principal payments and then the next 5 years, and et cetera. And they say create these mortgage-backed securities. And then from there, they, in the 2000s, when they got the computer technology, they said, well, we'll do even more. We'll create derivatives of those derivatives. And then there was actually a third layer, and it got so complicated that
that's selling those what I call blocks.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you make money off of them. And then
and you can sell the first block, but then you sell something that simulates that block, but it isn't actually that block. And those are syndicated securities.
That sounds really complicated. And
it blew up pretty quickly. Yeah. But if you don't, the people in Wall Street just trying to figure out ways to make money.
Yeah, of course. So what does the future hold for John Barlow and your company?
The company I'll stick with, my passion is aviation. I got into that at a very early age through my uncle, who was, worked for NASA, and I own a couple of airplanes.
I didn't know that. You do?
Yeah.
And what do you fly?
They're both Cirrus.
Okay.
One of them's a prop plane that I have out at ECP. I have a hangar there, and the other one's a Vision Jet, which is about 7 passengers, 5 really, that I lease out to 5 companies, and I have that one in Dothan. But we still use it to get back and forth from Minnesota. And my kids came down, my grandkids came down. We flew the plane up there and flew them back, and then took them to Texas where their other grandparents are. So that's my passion. I spent half my business day. Yes, I do. Yeah, I do. Yeah,
that's awesome. Those Vision Jets are cool. I mean, so was the Cirrus 22, but
I found that I didn't think it would be this way, but I originally, the reason for the airplanes was because of Barlow Research and the Iowa Falls State Bank in Iowa Falls, which I became chairman, CEO of, and down here.
You still have the bank?
Until the pandemic, and then we sold it.
Okay.
But just real quickly, my dad had leukemia. He died in 1995. And then, I asked him and said, well, what do you want me to do, Dad? And he said, I have 3 sisters. They're all older. And he said, sell the bank. After I'm gone, sell the bank. So he passed away, and I went through the funeral, and a couple of days later I was with my mom, and I said, well, here's the process. And Mom, let's have a conversation. And she said, you ain't going to sell this. This is going to stay in the family, and you're going to run it. So, and I thought, oh my God. And it was probably the best thing that ever happened for Barlow Research, because I was forced to expand and take my fingers off of all of the buttons, because I ran it like my dad ran the bank. I mean, I knew everything that was going on, but I had to rely on these people, the 3 that are running the company today. Yeah. And so I I always had it. I started flying as a kid. Actually, I took my first plane ride with a Catholic priest who put 4 or 5 altar boys in his plane and took them up. And I thought, boy, this is kind of cool. And then my uncle, got me interested in it. So I flew until I got married, and then I ran out of money. And then I started again when I was later on in life. And then the idea was that, I needed to go to the bank once a month at least for several days. And I wanted to come down here, and we bought a place down here. So that's how I got the airplanes. Come to the pandemic, the things changed at the bank. The last person that was there in 1995 retired. And I was trying to get my son to take over the bank, and he was in St. Paul. And he'd worked there for 5 years at the bank and was vice chairman. And he just said, Dad, I don't think this is going to work for me. And the only reason why it worked for me is because I grew up in the town. I grew up in the bank. It was second nature to me, and probably like the title work. I knew it. Yeah. The customers were my high school friends. Yeah.
He didn't have the personal connection.
Yeah. And Kathy's dad was there, and mother, and so I had, and my mother, and so I had a lot of my own little credit bureau, my personal credit bureau. Yeah. Gotcha. And so basically, I managed the bond portfolio for the bank, as well as did this, as well as set the strategy and kept things going for the family. But come around with the pandemic, I just said to my sisters, this isn't as fun anymore. The people are all gone, and we had a big turnover. And so we sold it to the community. And I went to the existing management there and said, okay, we'll sell this to you, to the community. Nobody can invest more than $1 million in this individual, or nobody can have more than 5% share of this bank. And you need to have a neighboring bank that's, can help support it, and they can have 25% of it. And the president of that bank put an offer together, and it was oversubscribed, within a week. And there were like 40 families in the community of Iowa Falls that bought the bank and kept it as a community bank, because that's what we wanted to do, is keep it as a community bank. So, but going back to the airplanes, there was no longer a reason to own an airplane, because I didn't have this, these 3 stops to make. It was just from here to Minneapolis, and I didn't have to do it every month. Yeah. And so that's when I started to charter it out, dry leases to companies. That what I discovered is that to get any place, to get to most places in the Southeast, you got to go through Atlanta, and businesses are willing to pay a lot not to do that. And it just gives them an extra 2 days of time if they're on a business trip. So it's
awesome.
Yeah, it's been super. Have you been in a Vision Jet?
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
They're really cool.
They are damn nice.
Yeah. And I've been in the 22 too. Yeah. Prop plane is a zippy little plane.
Yeah.
The tech in it. Yeah. It's like kind of like a Tesla of aviation. Yeah. They're cool.
Yeah.
Well, John, amazing story. Thank you for taking the time and sharing. I still want to get on that. Can I join the grandkids call?
Okay. We do have guest speakers.
Oh, we have
guest speakers. You got to contribute, though. You got to bring your ideas.
I want the tips. I want the investment tips. Amazing. Thank you for taking the time. You're a great neighbor, a good friend. I appreciate you.
Well, thank you, George. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Bye, guys.